So we've got a nice number actually on the call today. So I thought the first thing that we could do is just do a little bit of an introduction of who you are, where you're from, and if there's anything in particular that you'd like to find out from today's session. I will come around you all because you're all on different parts of the screen and just invite you to unmute and just introduce yourself. And once we've done our introductions, we will pass over to Chris, who's going to speak for about 20 minutes. And then we have lots of time for questions and comments and discussion. Okay, so Chris, I'm just going to come to you first. Chris, do you want to just introduce yourself for people who don't know you?
Yeah. Hello, hi everybody. My name's Chris, and as Leanne said, I'm head of public benefit at Nominet, and that's it, I think, for me.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. Alan, are you there? Would you like to take yourself off mute and just introduce yourself?
Hello. I'm not sure if this is working.
You are a little bit quiet, Alan,
okay.
but we can hear you.
Well, I'll just say hello. It's Alan from 2020 Media, and I'll go back to mute.
Perfect. Thanks, Alan. Andrew, can I come to you next?
Hi, I'm Andrew from Netistrar Limited. We're an ICANN accredited registrar, and I'm here today. I wondered about the Savanta initial poll where public benefit came out the top in people's minds of what the issues were, and I wondered whether what Chris and his team thought of what members' perception is of the public benefit campaign versus sort of the reality of it, and whether the problem that members see with public benefit is to do with how the money is spent and how it's Nominet's run as a not-for-profit, or is the public benefit campaign working as it is and does it need any change?
Okay, we'll come back to you on that one. Quite a lot to unpack there. Thanks, Andrew. Prudence, can I come to you next?
Of course you can. Hi, Prudence from Mark Monitor. I'm just curious. I have no specific questions that are complicated. I want to say hi, see what you guys do, and yeah, find out a bit more.
Thanks, Prudence. Simon Wilcox, can I come to you next?
You can indeed. Hello, everyone. I'm Simon Wilcox. I'm the MD of Digital Craftsman. We actually don't register domains on directly, but we manage a lot of domains on behalf of other people. And I'm really trying to be more engaged with what's going on at Nominet with all the fun and games over the last few months. So that's why I'm here today.
Thanks, Simon. Sophie, can I come to you next? Nope, Sophie is still on mute. Oh, I don't know. We might come back to Sophie. Susanna, can I come to you next, please?
Yeah, hello, Leanne. Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you.
Lovely. Hello, everybody. Well, I'm Susanna. I think it's no secret I've been pretty highly critical of some aspects of Nominet in recent years. However, I'm here today specifically because I have confidence in Chris. I've been really impressed by his ardor and his emotional engagement with public benefit initiatives. I was particularly impressed by the work with Scouts and with Samaritans. And I can see through when I've listened to Chris before, but that's not just about, Nominet doing a PR thing, but that he really genuinely cares about these initiatives. And I'm interested in whether those initiatives with the Scouts and Samaritans have carried on, whether there's a continuing contact there. I'd be interested in an update at some stage, but that's why I'm here today. Thanks,
Susanna. Stephen, can I come to you next?
Hello, yes, I'm Stephen Page. I'm one of the board members of Nominet, independent non-executive director. I'm here really to listen to what members think about this. I think the social program is right at the heart of the DNA of Nominet. Everyone I meet in the management team is absolutely committed to this program. but it's obviously had a fairly big pasting in the recent campaign. I'm surprised Mr. Blackler isn't here to come and put that case today, but there's obviously a lot of tension around this program. Personally, I think there's some great work the Nominet's been doing, and I just want to hear how the members respond to some of the things that have been done. But I've also got a longer term question on my mind, which is how can we use the wider power of the 2,500 members to try and make this social program bigger? You know, how can we engage staff from some of our members? How can we engage the members themselves? What do members think? You know, how can we really make a lot more out of what Nominet does in the space? That's something I'm keen to learn today. So let's see how the conversation goes. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. So one thing that because I always forget to say something, is if you do have a question, please do use the raise hand function. I cannot see you all on the same screen. So if you sit with your hand up, I may miss it and you may have your hand up for a while. So if you could use the raise hand function once Chris has finished his presentation, and then I can invite you to ask your question or make your comment. That would be great. Okay, I'm going to pass over to Chris, who is going to take us through the presentation.
Good stuff. Thanks, Leanne, and really good to see you all here firstly. And yeah, I think, you know, obviously as a few of you have noted, it comes on the back of a few months where the sort of climate externally with members, and there's been an EGM campaign with the same sort of name. So hopefully what I'll try to do is just give you a I think, for example, Andrew, you were at the presentation a couple of years ago where I sort of laid out the kind of structure of how we operate, how public benefit tries to achieve a social impact, how we get to programs and partnerships and things like that. So I'm going to reiterate a bit of that. I suppose the difference is we're 3 years on from those original building blocks being laid as foundations, and then now we've got programs and evidence of impact of trying to make a difference. So hopefully, I suppose the first 20 minutes is to try and frame what it is we do, how we do it, and what the principles are that underpin that work. I know Leanne's been through the kind of select raise hands thing. Please use that and interrupt me at any time to ask a question for clarification. The last thing I want is to go through this and having explained it a number of different times in different audiences, I know it can be slightly confusing about how do you get from a kind of organizational approach to social impact filtered down to how do you make a real difference on the things that you're trying to achieve. So if aspects of this don't make sense, please don't worry. They don't make sense to me all the time either, but do ask away, and I'll help as much as I can. So on to the first sort of slide. This try and describes the what. What do we do? And it's based on I suppose a mission statement is the wrong type of phrase, but an aim or an ambition or a principle that technology has the power to transform lives as well as leave young people behind. So that became the kind of foundational stone that we laid right at the beginning 3 years ago, which is, you know, there's so much that you could do in terms of philanthropy and grant making and funding. But we are living through strange times in terms of the role of digital. You know, if we were to wind the clock back 50 years, lots and lots of social issues that existed then still exist now in terms of categories, whether that's poverty, whether that's homelessness, whether that's social mobility or disadvantage in different groups. But in the last 15, 20 years, technology has come along, digital technology has come along and interrupted a lot of those pressing social issues. And in some cases, it's interrupted them for good, and in other cases, it's left people behind. But, you know, no doubt from everything we do and all the work that we do with charity partners, with organisations working in civil society and on social issues, the role of technology in that interface, if you like, has been really profound. It's even created new social issues or social categories. So internet safety, for example, didn't exist as a concept, obviously, before the internet. Now it's a significant contributor to the work that lots of partners, the NSPCC and other organisations try and address. So that's the place we started from. That building block was, how has technology positively and negatively impacted people? The question then was, do you concentrate on all people in the UK? Do you look at particular disadvantaged groups? Do you look at particular highly vulnerable groups? And one of the things I think that one of the choices that I suppose that needs to often be made when you're developing and designing a program is, do you want to try and develop programs that are in support of everybody, or do you focus in on a particular demographic? Because there's a consequence and a trade-off to that decision. You can try and do lots and lots for some people, or a little for lots of people. And the experience that Nominet had, the experience that we developed over a number of years, was to say, if we focus that on younger people, we can learn from our experience. We can offer more continuous support to organisations with that level of focus. It's not too broad and it's not too slim. But just as easily as any organisation or funder could have done, they could have said, we'll focus, as many funders do, we'll focus on older people, or we'll focus on disadvantaged people in the north of England, or we'll focus on, you can cut it lots of different ways. And we had to try and find what's the optimum use of the resources, the funding, the expertise that we can try and have a lasting, sustainable, positive social impact. So when we look at that role of the what, that can be everything from learning new skills, securing a first job if you're in that transition and into your first career, accessing essential services, which has become, and I'll touch on in a moment, become a real important topic in the last 12 months with the pandemic. Staying safe online, digital resilience, digital citizenship, and what I think we've learned over the last couple of years, particularly working, as Susanna, as you said, in depth with a lot of partners, is that all young people have a different set of particular needs. We were drawing a contradiction recently between digital access and inclusion and digital skills. You could be in a home environment in the last year and have no access to a device or connectivity, which for a great many of young people on a pupil premium and living in disadvantaged areas was significant. You can then go into school if you were lucky enough to, or you're lucky enough now to get into school, and have really great aptitude in terms of digital skills and coding and the like, but you don't have access at home. You're held back in the home purely through access. So you've got a situation there for that individual where the confidence, the motivation, the will, the opportunity is there, but the means and resources aren't. You've then got the reverse. For some people, they might have all the access they need in the home, but they might really struggle with the skills and confidence in school to do so. What that told us is that of all the young people all across the UK, they have a kind of unique footprint in their needs, and we've got an opportunity with the scale of program that we run, with the solid relationships and partnerships that we have with the youth sector now, to listen and understand what those unique needs are and try and build programs that look at both the harms and the opportunities for all young people in the UK. But back to the overall structure. So how do we sort of try and create social impact? We did quite a lot of research back in 2018, and a bit of sentiment research actually with wider stakeholders. So what are the key social issues that are interconnected with each other, but matter most at the moment? Where can Nominet add unique value, or where are the gaps? A lot of funders are very traditional. They operate on traditional lines. A lot of organisations have very specific and tight criteria for what they fund and where they fund, and where is the gap where we can add most support. And at the bottom of that slide there, you can see the 5 social issue areas that we've concentrated on. So that's digital access and digital inclusion, which I can touch on about, the huge impact that's had this year. A separate category is digital skills and careers. Another one we'd call critical digital services. Then you have digital resilience, which is the new co-opted name, I suppose, for internet safety. And then you have countering online harm. So if you hold in your mind those 5 themes, I'll take you on now to my very boring framework, but it's important, I'm afraid, for me to focus in on. So first of all, who are we supporting? It's quite often, particularly if you look at corporate social responsibility programs or corporate community foundations, they tend to start with their products first, or what do we do and how can that help society? One of the important things I'm pleased that we put at the centre of everything is you put the user, the end user, the end beneficiary at the very heart of your programme. So who are we supporting? It's kind of not quite enough to always say we're just helping young people. There are lots of charities and organisations who work on early years. There are organisations and infrastructure around primary, around secondary, around further education and early careers. There are organisations who work in the care sector and who work on specific issues and areas. But one of the things we did is say, by and large, when we develop programmes, let's think about the young people that we're trying to bring about change to support. So is it all young people? Is it every young person in the UK? That might be every young person in school. It might be every young person up into including the age of 25. But think about the programme. Are you trying to lift the digital skills, let's say, of every young person? Then there's a focus in on, are we working to support disadvantaged young people? So disadvantaged young people, and you can categorise that or think about those in a number of ways. So that might be they live in areas of multiple deprivation, they are on a pupil premium, for example, they're disadvantaged because of circumstances in the home. There might be, for example, we know there's quite high incidences of intergenerational worklessness, or there's drug and alcohol abuse in the home. These types of criteria are the types of criteria that really respected youth charity organisations apply to their thinking of their programmes. And then you've got particularly at-risk groups. This tends to be, in the main, young people who are from disadvantaged backgrounds, but circumstances have meant that they are more vulnerable, highly vulnerable at a particular point in time to greater risk. That might be greater risk online or offline. It might be at risk themselves of falling into gangs. It might be at risk from domestic violence. It might be at risk from drugs and alcohol. There's again a range of criteria. So it's thinking about where is our starting point, who are we supporting? And then you move over to the social issues. So I've already gone through that. So you've got essential digital services, access, skills, internet safety, and safe from online harms. It's only at that point then that we start to think about designing and building programs to have a sustainable social impact. So down on the right-hand side there, and hopefully, Susanna, if you can see that, there's a bit of a list of what we were doing by March 2020, which I hope gives you some reassurance that I think you were on the Samaritans call, for example, that the point of trying to have a sustainable social impact is that you stick with partners and programs kind of through thick and thin, for want of a better term of phrase.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Sustainability, yeah. I mean, it always is important.
Yeah, and I think, it's tempting to sometimes want to go and do something sort of flashbang wallop and to go, there you go, it's done, but rarely it's the case that and particularly in the way that we program, where we're partnering with organisations as best we can, offering them as much support and guidance and access to networks as possible, that relationship and the programme is sustainable. But I'll come on to a few examples to try and give some of that some flavour. So I'll run through a few of these because I think, so Andrew, for instance, I think I was sort of talking when we met a long time ago now, well, I think it was 2018 or 2019. These were sort of more abstract concepts about what we might be doing, rather than actually now I can sort of finally say we've done or we are doing these. So I'll start with the top one, but I won't go through all of them, don't worry, I won't be that boring. But Reset at the top there is the name of a program that we created and is still going now, and we're hoping to develop a second iteration this year. Reset is about Reset's mental health. So what it's focused on are the essential digital services around mental health and wellbeing for young people online. In 2018, we conducted research with New Philanthropy Capital looking at the whole landscape in the UK of digital mental health services. And they were a bit of a patchwork quilt. And I won't bore you with all the detail because there's a big sort of 40-page report looking into all that. But the headline was that there was a contradiction in the whole system, which was the expert trusted services that have got expertise behind them weren't or haven't been great at digital services. And on the other hand, you've got commercially leaning organisations or other types of entities who are brilliant at digital, but have no evidence that their services on mental health and wellbeing had any efficacy or impact. And the background to all of that was that there's been a surge, and particularly in the last year, a significant surge in the number of young people needing access to mental health services on their terms, in methods and ways and media that they need. And there's definitely been a significant change in, for example, the way in which young people want to interact with, particularly with preventative and early mental health services. So we developed what's called a theory of change, which means, based on the research, what are you going to do about it? How will you do it? And how will you know it works? And what we developed was the Reset program. And it said, let's develop a program where we can target our funding towards youth charity sector organisations who work specifically on mental health and wellbeing, who are struggling to develop digital products and services, despite their users needing and wanting those things. And then the second one was to improve the signposting and ability for young people to access those services online. And from that, Reset was born. So it sees us supporting organisations such as Nightline, Young Minds, The Mix, Bernardo's and Snook, which is a design patterns for mental health program that we launched recently, and a whole host of others. So Place to Be, which operate in schools, needed to develop and think through how do we develop a new service that complements our face-to-face service. So we began that program, funding and partnering those organisations, helping them measure and monitor the impact that that's had for them. And then the pandemic struck. So in March 2020, obviously all the charity sector suddenly woke up to a completely new world and the implications of lockdown. One of the first things that all the partners in the Reset program flagged was that they were very, very worried about their face-to-face services, the fact that a lot of users were now hidden from them, unsupported, in vulnerable situations in the home. What do they do? We need to, their principal concern is we need to drive awareness of our services and the ability to connect to those services as soon as possible. So we helped them develop a digital communications program and started to run that. On the back of both the program and the support for during COVID campaign, we've just finished commissioning new research. What has been the impact of COVID on digital mental health services, with a view to looking at doing a second wave of Reset. So we'll continue the path that we're on with the current partners. There really are some incredible organisations in there who've worked really, really hard and we've worked closely with. But we know there's a possibility to do even more. We've still got a spike, a growth in mental health needs from young people, and we've still got a bit of a patchwork quilt in the wider youth mental health charity sector to help them become more effective, become more efficient, and reach more people. There's loads and loads and loads of material on the public benefit pages. There's reports that I'm more than happy to send on and share, where you can find out more about this. And and some of the successes that we've had with partners and they've had. So we work closely with Hub of Hope, which is a signposting tool by Chasing Stigma. They've just been approved to appear on the NHS website, which is a really massive material gain for them. It means that that's now the definitive sort of UK guide to where you can find local services across the UK. So that's Reset in a very, very short nutshell. Susanna, you mentioned about Samaritans, that partnership continues. We help them build the intelligent dashboard, which I think you were on the call when Francis joined us. We have the online chat service, which we underwrote. We're in conversations with them now about a number of different elements of their digital transformation program that they're thinking about. We're working with them to go, what part of their ambition is important next. They've shared with us some of the challenges they've got around recruiting volunteers who may want to work remotely. We're exploring how they can have a virtual volunteer program instead of people visiting and having to go into branches. Some of the insights that have been generated from the intelligent dashboard that we helped with, they're able now to more readily predict. So whilst it's helped with Samaritans' efficiency, so they can kind of direct volunteers to what should they be on the phone, should be on the email, should be on the online chat service. One of the biggest impacts of the intelligent dashboard is that they can now more readily predict when there'll be spikes in need for the service, which they didn't have to hand before. So they now know, Sunday evenings at 2 AM, they're very likely to receive an influx of calls compared to other parts of the day. And that means they can start to adapt how they recruit, train, and ask for support for volunteers to work in the more difficult hours of the week. And it's one of the examples where we can't really capture the impact of that, except anecdotally to say they know that they wouldn't have had these insights without going through that process. So that's one example. On that list there, I suppose the question is for anybody, is there anything going down that list that you'd like to hear a little more about, rather than me sort of trot through everything? Because I'm conscious that I can get a bit stuck into these and take a bit of time over them.
Any suggestions from anyone? Doesn't
No.
look like it.
No, okay, I'll carry on a little bit. So that's
Just let me ask you one question. Which are you most proud of? I mean, and which do you think is the one that most needs kind of, a further boost?
It's a good question. It's a really good question.
That's like asking Chris which one of his children he's most proud of. He doesn't want to pick anybody out.
The girl, definitely
I'm
the girl.
proud of all of them.
Easy. Yeah, that was easy. I think that the Reset one is, I suppose the way I look at things, Stephen, is and I've been working on something this morning about what is the impact on people. So there's you can almost categorize it. There's no sort of real rule of thumb, but is the intervention that you've helped support life enhancing? Has it helped a lot of people just a little bit? And there's a continuum there right through to life saving. But as you know, I've got a sort of a past history of working in humanitarian emergencies. So there is something about, it is possible with the Samaritans and with Reset that the intervention that not we obviously, because we're a funder and a partner, but the organisations have had, there is a possibility that we may never know the detail of where it has materially helped someone through to the next day. That's what Samaritans do. That's what a number of our Reset partners do, and put them on a path away from a significant and critical mental health crisis. So I would say that of all the interventions that we think about through that list, that, and I suppose that the Countering Online Harm Fund, which attempts to support organisations to eliminate and reduce and move people away from child sexual abuse and exploitation, those are two at the extreme of life saving that I think are really important. The differences with things like microbit and the Scouts, they're very important, and they can help an awful lot of people improve their life chances, their educational opportunities. So, you know, at some point you lose the ability to go to track what has a major impact. That's a terrible answer.
That was, as Leanne suggested, trying to tell us which of your children you like best.
Wasn't it? Yeah, yeah.
I think what I take away from that is that there are some here which might directly save lives, actually, which is very important. There are others which give opportunity, and in many ways, that's you know, we mustn't understate that either. So that's what you're saying, I think.
And I think that drives to, you know, when people donate, you'll all, you know, have or do make donations to charitable causes. You know, there's lots and lots of amazing health charities in the UK. And you'll make a decision as to whether, you know, there's lots of people who give to education charities or youth charities, but, you know, there's a reason why Cancer Research UK and British Heart Foundation are some of the biggest charities in the UK, St John's Ambulance, RNLI. They all operate with a mission to work on life-saving interventions, and that's why they tend to be more supported, which I suppose makes sense, really. Yeah. But it's a choice. Go on, sorry, shall I carry on?
I'm just going to say, in the interest of time, because I think we've probably got at least two or three quite meaty questions. I was just going to say, should we move on to
I'll
the
skip
slide?
through, So very quickly, just to say what's happened in the last 14 months and everything, I suppose, that's been in my mind. I know we've had, you know, the EGM and lots going on in Nominet, but for me, the year has been mainly about the pandemic and how do we pivot towards supporting the work in that area? How do we react and adapt? How do we maintain what we're doing? And then how do we address and understand what is going to be needed now as phrases such as build back better and returning to normal arrive? So this is just a short overview of what we continue to deliver because work was already underway. So we launched the Internet Safety Programme earlier this year. That's with ChildNet and with Southwest Group for Learning. We introduced the school's mental health charity Place to Be into the Reset partnership. We publicly launched a digital citizenship badge with the Scouts, the Safety Tech Innovation Network with DCMS and KDN. And we produced 6 episodes of This Is How, which is a new initiative that I've got a little screen grab there. And if you haven't heard about that, it's essentially a podcast series on digital skills for people who are entering and thinking about a first career in digital, but it's also a digital skills platform which allows users to personalize their journey, learn a bit more about the key roles in technology, and then go on to study, learn, or earn qualifications in that discipline. So it started off last year with 6 episodes, and we're just starting to record for the podcast, that is, the next episodes with a host of young people who work in youth culture brands. And the key there has been to try and engage and inspire young people who go, ooh, systems engineer or a developer, what do you mean? So it's kind of coming in, that the hook there is the brand and the young people that they can relate to, because we know we've got a digital skills jobs crisis and we've got a youth unemployment crisis, and the two should really theoretically cancel each other out. But the gap hasn't been bridged with many of the efforts that have been done. So this sort of fundamentally acts as a pointer to engage and encouraging people to think about, understand the opportunities out there for them, and then to move them through that process of learning, qualifying and earning. Onto the middle column there quickly. So through COVID, we adapted. So I think it was right at the very, very start, in fact, sort of about 2 weeks before lockdown, we came together with some kind of partners and peers in the sector to explore a concept called zero rating, which had been flagged from a couple of sources around, could this be done for universal credit? And it's essentially where a website has the data charges removed by the telecoms providers. So if you visit a particular site, it doesn't cost you on your data. And we were very concerned, just from all the work that we've done in digital access and inclusion, that people have a lot of people have a fairly precarious relationship with the amount of data that they have on their phone. Not everybody has, home Wi-Fi and access to the internet, as I'm lucky enough to have. I think it's up to 25 million pay-as-you-go handsets through the UK, and about 7 million people in Scotland and Wales, or 1 in 7 people in Scotland and Wales, are what you'd classify as living in data poverty. So we, I suppose, lobbied and pushed and cajoled the telecoms operators and DCMS with the help of a bit of a coalition to zero rate access to the NHS, which meant that when you visited and still visit the NHS online, and in particular the COVID pages, it meant that everybody in the UK, if they had a device, could access the COVID information, the key COVID information from the NHS in England, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. And so that was a fairly hefty undertaking in terms of pivoting towards the response. We at the same time were working with business in the community, who were working with lots and lots of local businesses and local charities, but they were really struggling to match the offers of support. Do you remember there was lots of, can we have some loo roll or computers or PPE equipment at the time? We helped them develop a platform that matched the two together. So charities could post what they needed, really local community organisations and businesses could post what they had, and a matching. So it's kind of like match.com for emergency relief in local communities. And we had, I think, 2,000 matches made through that platform. But we got Outlandish, a social tech agency, to build the platform and then open source the wireframes and the structure for that for others to be able to use on different emergency responses. I then worked, I'm about to say part-time, but I moved over into device.now, which is an emergency initiative whilst trying to keep this going. And that was an appeal to transfer devices and connectivity to families who were isolating and people who were isolating. And we got to 11,500 devices, but that wasn't enough in terms of the need. So we designed and built a platform called Reboot. Which, again, Leon, I'll go into more detail at another time because I've realised there's a lot to talk about in each of these.
So actually, on that point, Chris, I was going to see if Andrew wanted to come in, because obviously you've given a little bit of an overview of the scale and the scope of the public benefit programme and the breadth of the partnerships. And I think Andrew sort of at the beginning was saying he wanted to know what the problem was with members and whether they had a problem with how the money was spent. I think I'd throw that back to Andrew and say, given what Chris has just said, what do you think the issues are for members in terms of the public benefit programme that Nominet is delivering?
So it was 4 days ago we had a webinar with Savanta, and a large part of that presentation was about what came top in the straw poll and the focus groups, and public benefit came 54% of the straw poll. People saw it as an issue. So as a member, taking part in the webinars, and the next one is public benefit, I just, as the context from the last webinar that I attended, I just wanted to know what Chris saw as the problems with the members. Now, as what I think the problem is, I think there's, at the moment, Nominet seems to be deciding what the charities are, which are all good, worthwhile charities, and nobody's discrediting the work, but members are not involved in choosing those charities, or members are not, you don't, like the Reboot project was a Nominet initiative. It's not something that the members are involved with, or grassroots registrars get to decide from a range of charities where the money's spent. So that's what the problem I see is. The other aspect that links to Nominet being not-for-profit in direct relation to the registration fee, where people see that the registration fee should be a certain level and not go any higher. And if it does go any higher, then all the surplus money should go out to the charity. That's what the Nominet Trust was for, to distribute the profit. And the other area,
not all of it. Obviously, there was a, in terms of providing a donation of a set amount. Yes, that's right. But it certainly wasn't all of the surplus.
And some members think that the price should come down if there is a surplus, and and
if that happened, is it worth a trade-off between reduced registration fees and less investment in public benefit?
Well, that's where that was the root cause of the EGM, where it wasn't going into public benefit, that the public benefit had dropped to 1.9 million, when previous years it'd been 4 million, 5 million, 6 million. And that investment was going into cybersecurity and other areas of the business. So that's what triggered the EGM. Whereas now you're backing away from cybersecurity and increasing again the spending public benefit post the EGM.
And I think Chris is really pleased about that.
and
members
will be as well. Members are
good.
I think it's it's hard because it's like I think we did touch on it, Andrew, when we last spoke, which is, well, there's a few things for me. Is like, what do we mean by public benefit? Because to lots of different people, it's a fairly ambiguous term. Certainly not when I come across working in this field pre, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It can, to some organisations that means corporate social responsibility, community fundraising. It can mean social investment or social impact. It can mean grant making. I suppose, because I think there was a question asked before this, wasn't there, Leanne, about like, what do you mean by public benefit? And to me, it's the function that I've been carrying out here for the last number of years, which is a positive social impact beyond the business that has no commercial imperative. So it is grant making with objectivity and with transparency to affect, social change and social impact. But it could mean different things to different people as well. There's a public benefit named EGM campaign. That might mean public interest to some. It might mean good causes only to others. It might mean in everybody's interests to another set of people. It's hard there isn't a dictionary definition of it, I suppose.
And in terms of just picking up Andrew's point around members being more involved,
please,
in the partnerships, yeah. Andrew, how do you see that working? How do you see the role?
Sort of when you go to Tesco or wherever, and you're at the till, and you get one of those tokens for the charities, and you go to the end of the till and you decide which box to put it in for the local charity. I mean, if Nominet set up something like that where members could vote on which way they wanted the money to go or whatever, but it's just, I don't know why the supermarkets do it like that, but it just involves the customer in the journey of the decision.
Can I come in on that, Andrew, if that's all right? I think there's definitely legitimacy to all different methods. There's no right or wrong. The approach here that I'm talking about is kind of how can we be most strategic and most focused on achieving a sustainable social impact. And then if you take Waitrose or Asda as your example, and they're really good examples who they do both things. They have major partnerships. If you look at M&S, they have some of the world's best partnerships with long-term charity partners like WWF, Breakthrough Breast Cancer, Oxfam, and the Plan A campaign, things like that. They also do staff selected charity of the year, and then they have customer appointed charities where you can select. They also have cause marketing campaigns where if you buy a sandwich, money goes to shelter at certain points of the year and things like that. So I think there's always room for all of them if they're done right and the resources behind it right, but there's trade-offs. So there's a trade-off to only the approach that I'm explaining here, which is by, having people like me designing and proposing and suggesting approaches, strategic approaches to how we can affect change, then it's less engaging for certain groups or certain people, because quite rightly you're going, well, I would like a choice. If you then said, okay, let's do the choice aspect. If you look at most charities of the year campaigns where people get to choose to vote, they're directed, as we said before, most often the most vote wins goes to organisations that quite often have the most support already. So having spent years as a corporate fundraiser for a charity, if I was in the same foyer waiting to pitch as Save the Children and Cancer Research UK, I may as well turn around and walk out again, because they always came out top. So you will always get voted in by popularity. There's another, but all that can be, like, I think is a legitimate discussion to have about the pros and cons. The other thing that misses out on there is that you, Andrew, sat there now, might be really passionate about a very specific organisation in your area that you've worked with for a long time, and say, I'd like to nominate them for a grant or support because I believe in their cause, believe in their mission. It might be a local Samaritans branch. It might be a school parent teachers association. It could be a scout group. It could be nothing to do with anything that we've done before. But I think that's also another way of kind of democratizing or thinking about how do we democratically or more openly allow people to offer and make choices about where good can happen. And there's, like I said before, if you take the Nominet Trust model, it's a brilliant model in some respects, but it had its limitations. This is a good model, but it has all models, all approaches by different people have pros and cons. The most important thing for me is somebody at some point makes a choice, and that you can then get on with trying to help people less fortunate. Because
okay, thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
just concerned about time.
Well.
And I know we've got Simon with his hand up, and then I need to come to Susanna. So Simon, do you want to take yourself off mute and let us know?
Having been involved in some charity stuff before, there's always the very real danger of a death by committee if too many things are allowed to be spread out across thousands of people who might want to make a view. I think the current setup of the public benefit organisation within Nominet, which is trying to actually develop and do things rather than just provide funding to people, so there is actually a developmental aspect to that. I think actually I really like that organisation. I guess what the campaign was talking about really was probably the initialization of that process, in terms of do the members agree that those are the things that the things that you articulated on the previous slide here, those things actually the things that we think Nominet should be doing. And I think there hasn't been that level of transparency and engagement around that. But I do think once those have been agreed, and I must admit, at first cut of that, I would say, yeah, I agree with those. I'd be all in favour of you getting on with that. I think the decision, if assuming that we decide the decision is that we're going to be, it's not really a campaigning organisation, is it? But a developmental organisation rather than just a funding and fundraising outfit. We've got to let the experienced people get on and do it, because they're the ones who know what they would, who know the best ways to achieve those goals. And I think otherwise, you end up with a lot of people with a lot of views, and you end up arguing about what colour to paint the bike shed, and you never actually get to anything.
I think there's and a gentle transition as well. If we, as Susanna said before, but if you support an organisation in the way you're saying, Simon, is exactly in the way you're saying that often what people don't see behind the hood of all this is, as I was saying before, it started a long time ago. is it takes a long time to research, design, and then allow that organisation to develop and build. So I was going to touch on the, we've got a Prince's Trust partnership around roles, youth unemployment. They're going to be a good year building the architecture and the data and the digital platform behind that. So we have to be very steady about. It's great to change and adapt and grow and evolve, but you have to do so fairly gently, not for ourselves, but for the
exactly. They're
long-term.
They're long-term plans rather than which charity we're going to bung some money at this month because they're one of the three that we can drop our token into. And I think I understand what Andrew is saying, but I think actually we have a longer-term vision for what we want it to be. But I wanted to make a couple of other points this year, and a couple of people have talked about Nominet being a not-for-profit organisation, and we know that the previous CEOs and others have changed, were subtly changing their description of it to be a profit with purpose. And I think the heart of the campaign was to get back to it being a not-for-profit and for the public benefit. And so we're hoping that as a result of the changes that are coming down the track, or hopefully coming down the track, or it's going to get quite, there'll be another period of instability. I think there will be, or there should be, a lot more money available for that public benefit, as we sorted 1.5 million, was it last year, but it has been as high as
1.9. Yeah, I mean,
it's been very high. So I guess my
it's
question,
been higher when it was going through to Nominet Trust, but that has larger operating costs.
Yes. My question would be, I mean, the sort of the elevator pitch. You've got a load more money. What are you going to do with it? What do you want to do with
it? Well, there's two. Well, God. This is. I take it this is all hypothetical. So
absolutely. But I mean, the idea is, I mean, everyone knows what particularly when you're in that sort of organisation, everybody knows what you would do with a little bit more. If you had another 100,000 or another £250,000, another £500,000, £1 million, you know what you would do with it. I know what I do with my company, but that's a different exercise.
And you need to answer that in 10 seconds.
In 10 seconds.
I want to come to Susanna next. Off the top of your head, what are you doing with the money?
I would work more deeply, so work with the same sort of volumes of young people that we're trying to support in disadvantaged and vulnerable circumstances, but that allows us to work more deeply. So at the moment, it works out at a few pounds per person that we're trying to build structural stuff. I would work more deeply with those young people to make sure that they're outcomes that we're trying to achieve.
And that is an excellent answer. Thank you very much.
Well done, Chris. Thanks for the question, Simon. Susanna, I'm going to come to you next. Do you want to take yourself off mute?
Thank you.
Ask your question?
I'm going to stay out of the politics of stuff today. I'm really just here to talk about public benefit initiatives. William noted in the sort of conversation in the chat that there's been a report today about a harrowing extent of sexual abuse in schools through abuse of technology. And I think we're all, well, any of us who are parents, any of us who are human beings are appalled by this news, not just new news. Before I was a nurse, I was a teacher for 25 years. I was the head of 2 schools. I've got a lot of feeling for young people and the need for them to handle technology responsibly and to be helped and supported in that and to avoid issues of internet safety. I spoke to Mark about a concept I had, and I don't know if he passed this on or not. And it's a kind of up in the clouds concept. I just put it across to you, Chris, and Stephen, as you're on the board. I just wonder whether there's scope for developing a creative program with the Department of Education in your capacity as the UK registry to allocate a free domain name under school supervision for every single pupil from years 5 to 11, which could grow year on year, giving millions of pupils a sense of ownership of a domain, of a website with developing web design skills, and with private sections where they put their own interests and hobbies, and study sections. I mean, it could be developed in all sorts of directions, but all subject to a school supervision and teaching about internet safety, responsibilities, and sort of developing digital skills year on year on year. My thought being that even if it seems a bit off to give them a domain name each for free, millions of them, on leaving school, you've then got a large number, millions of kids who know what it's been like to own a domain, have still got their legacy website, and who at the age of 18 may then choose to carry on registering those domains. So what I'm saying is that this could form a sort of project with the Department of Education. I know it's way off at the minute, where not only are you fundamentally providing the registry function, which I think a lot of members feel should be central, but actually it could be in your financial, in a context of falling domain registrations, you could end up finding that even if just 10% of school pupils retained their websites and domain names, that would be hundreds of thousands of extra domains in circulation on into adulthood. But my main sort of thinking behind it is a development of digital skills, but giving them a sense of ownership and the need for responsibility accountable to IT teachers within schools, for example. I just throw that one in. I'm not really asking for an answer right now, but I did raise it with Mark. And
I remember, Susanna. Yeah, I think William had his hand up then. Just, you've got something to build on that, William. Oh, I think you're on mute. Sorry.
Yeah, somebody muted me. Am I? Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, can hear you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think what Susanna's saying is very valid. I mean, one of the things we've got to try and do is remind everybody that there are alternatives to Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and the social media platforms, which are obviously controlled outside all of our ability to influence, and give the kids the idea that, you know, they have a platform which they can create and develop themselves, for which they will be responsible, and just generally spread the notion that the internet didn't come from Bill Gates and Facebook and that lot. It came from individuals like us and themselves, and give them the examples to actually take forward. So I'm very much with you on that one, Susanna. Okay.
I thank you, William, and Susanna. I do remember. I remember when I first joined, actually, going back to Nominet Trust days ago. Why does anybody pay for .org.uk if they're all charities? I mean, I quickly learned there's much more complexity to it than that. But I also am old enough to remember getting a National Record of Achievement from school, which listed my cycling proficiency and other things. But it was what's the digital version of that? And I think, you know, if you think about, I think, Stephen, you've come in on it as well about it is a really interesting idea, conceptually really interesting, because, you know, that's what LinkedIn attempts to be, but LinkedIn isn't a popular platform for younger generations. I mean, and nor is Facebook anymore. You've got that, you know, the social media giants, people are navigating and flying between the few, and the interoperability has been a big thing, which is part of the Safety Tech Innovation Network kind of thought. But you know, anything is possible, and I think that if you think about the way that I've tried to describe how we program, which is begin with discovery research. What's the feasibility? What's the sustainability? What are the unintended and intended consequence of trying to make a really significant intervention, particularly something as structural as that? Then that's how I'd begin that process. I use something called the double diamond approach to program design, where you take the problem statement. Is it digital skills? Is it digital access? Who might theoretically get access to something like that, but actually can only access it in the school? But universally across the UK, what are the pros and cons? What's the feasibility of being able to implement something like that? And then could you pilot something to then say, okay, if we did this, what would be the material benefits to young people? So there's definitely something where I'm trying to describe it a bit like a Heath Robinson machine. You take the principle of the idea, you apply the problem statement to it, and then you run it through the process to go, what it should tell you through an investigation is will this have a sustainable material impact on those issues that you quite rightly point out are very prevalent. Digital skills haven't improved markedly. Internet safety and vulnerability to harms are all fairly stagnant in terms of being too high. So I think we should be innovative and open to new ideas.
Thanks, Chris. I am conscious of time, but I see that Simon's got his hand up. I'd forgotten how chatty Chris was. So on our next quarterly
Always your
catch-up,
mistake.
because we've been
I
working
just
from
had,
home, and I've totally forgotten
I've not seen
how
anybody
much
all
he
day. I've only
talked.
got gerbils to talk to.
So we must remember to maybe have an extended session next for our next
Yeah.
quarterly catch-up. Simon, can I come to you?
Yeah, I was just going to come back in really with a sort of combination of what Susanna and William were talking about. I think one of the things where we haven't been able to sort of express any kind of view is where we're going with some of these. And I think some of this stuff comes under digital skills, certainly, but I think there is a role of Nominet as the kind of the parent of the internet in the UK, as it were, grandparent, I suppose, these days, but also, in its kind of wider context, is to explain, is to have a role in explaining to young people particularly what the internet is, what its capabilities are. As you say, goes beyond the mega sites to the ability to do other things. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a developer, because being a good developer is very much a mindset, and it's far too easy to be a bad developer. But in particular context of looking at things like safety online. Susanna, you made a comment. William, I think it was, made a comment in the chat about school children saying they can't be bothered to report harassment, but at the same time, people need to be aware of, the kids need to be aware of the potential impact of those. And the very real one that was last week was Ollie Robinson in the England cricket team, and we know that there are others, including some of the very senior members of the team, who, when they were very much younger, made ridiculous, defamatory, horrendous comments on Twitter, believing it to be a transient medium that is going to disappear. And at the end of the day, there are rights and responsibilities that come with being an internet citizen, and I think there's a good opportunity for Nominet to lead in trying to explain what those are to young children, so that they don't,
yeah, I think that's a really
because I'm sure, because it's quite, because
yeah.
a lot of kids, what you don't know, what you don't see from all those things is what the context of those things are. And you can say, yes, it's absolutely a racist message that you posted there, but you don't know whether that's just something that a younger person is saying to elicit some other kind of response, that they, to be part of a peer group or all sorts of things, and may not be a view that they hold at all. Whereas now, once that comes out, there are ramifications down the line for what you do when you're younger. Unfortunately, these days it doesn't get forgotten on the playground.
Leave no footprint when you're from the analog generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm really glad these things didn't occur when I was a kid.
just to reassure you, though, that we almost haven't gone into the next level of detail within that right-hand column there. This is a kind of list of everything that's going on at the moment. But further down there, where you can see internet safety in schools as one of the programs. Yeah. So we're working on something called Project Evolve with Southwest Groups for Learning, which is giving every teacher in school the ability to very specifically follow and track the internet safety capabilities and skills of each classroom and each individual in the classroom. Okay. So their last program was adopted by 14,000 schools, and this one is its evolution of that. And it's another level on again. Coupled with that, and the ChildNet Digital Leaders Program, the Scouts Digital Citizenship Program, which has lots of internet safety work. Excellent. And a new program that we've got coming. I would say that of all the organisations that you engage with, whether it's Nominet or others, we probably do more in internet safety, given what we've been building over the last year than probably anybody, maybe bar BT. And we've got more to come that specifically talks about balance between how do you be a good digital citizen, how do you enjoy yourself and have a positive experience, but how are you aware and understand the dangers. And I think that's why we've been working a lot with Parent Zone, who are a very, very sort of thoughtful organisation in this space. Digital resilience is really superseding internet safety as the kind of the normal phrase, and I think you'll see a bit of a a change in the language that's used, which is kind of like, how do you educate young people about their conduct, but also about how they protect and safeguard themselves, because they're open and exposed to this digital world just like the real world now. So there's a lot of work going on at the UK Safer Internet Centre, and we've been as involved as I think possibly we can be, and there's more to come. But everything you've all said is absolutely right in that space. I suppose I just haven't had a chance to sort of, because I talk too much, to go into detail.
And I think
on that note,
on that note, we can't be done with the hour.
Yeah, we're 10 minutes over.
Yeah, well over.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry, everyone.
Okay, note to self, make sure that Chris has a great big analog clock next to him.
20 minutes, I said, I think.
I'm so right. I have taken liberties with the time, but I just want to say thank you very much to you all for a really interesting and constructive debate and input. It's actually really useful. Thanks to you, Chris, for sort of giving the overview, but also thanks very much to all of you guys just for sort of participating. So
can I say one more thing, Leanne, which is if anybody wants to speak to me in the future, just, I mean, I've always had like the principle of come and chat. More than happy. I've spoken to a few members one-to-one on a number of occasions, but not enough. And I'm always really, really happy to chat. I really like the conversations, and I benefit from hearing and working with you all. So my virtual Zoom door is always open, if that makes.
Yeah, you can always get in touch with engagement@nominet.uk and we can put you in touch with Chris. That's absolutely fine. So thank you very much for holding on just for those extra 10 minutes. We'll make a note of that for the next session, and watch this space, because it sounds like there's lots more to come from a public benefit perspective. So thanks very much to everyone for joining us today. Thank you to Chris for presenting, and to you guys for all of your very thoughtful input. It's much appreciated. Have a great day.
Take care, everybody.